If our spring is any indication, I have a few worries about what summer might be like. You know, spring came a month or 6 weeks early this year. We've been 10 degrees, 15 degrees, sometimes warmer than normal. We've been drier than normal already. And so I thought I might show you a few plants that will be heat and drought tolerant this summer and any summer. These are the kinds of things that you can plant down by the mailbox maybe, where there's a little less irrigation and you don't get down there as often with the hose, and still have really beautiful color all through the season. So starting back here, this is Gaillardia, or blanket flower. This is a variety called Oranges and Lemons with these beautiful bicolor orange and yellow flowers. And if you deadhead this throughout the summer, it will continue flowering through the heat and the drought and give you really good color all summer long with no stopping. Another great perennial is Baptisia australis. This is one of our great native plants, and it has already flowered. You might know this by the common name of false indigo. And in the spring, it has a long indigo blue stalk of beautiful flowers on it. But I like this plant just as much in the summer garden for its beautiful foliage. This foliage stays clean. There are no insect or disease problems with this plant. It has a big taproot on it and is extremely drought tolerant. These leaves will look great until they freeze in the fall. Another great drought tolerant plant, also with really good foliage, is this Rudbeckia maxima. This is the largest of all of the Rudbeckias. You might know Rudbeckia more as black-eyed Susan, like Rudbeckia goldstern, but this is a native plant, native to the southeast and the Midwest. And as you can see, it's quite large. These leaves actually are only about half the size they'll get. It will form a really big mound of this blue-green foliage at the base and then send up these tall bloom stalks. And if I peel back up here at the top, you can see the flower bud hidden in there. And in about 2 or 3 more weeks, this will be a tall brown cone with yellow ray flowers, yellow petals outside, and it'll look like a big brown coned daisy. And speaking of daisy-like flowers, of course, cone flowers have always been popular, and never more so than in the last few years. But what I want to show you here are some of the species cone flowers. These are not hybrids, these are the native species. This is Echinacea Tennesseensis, our very rare Tennessee cone flower. Hot, dry, it grows in the cedar glades where sometimes in the winter it can actually be inundated in water, so it's tolerant of our heavy, wet clay soils in the winter, and it's just as tolerant of drying out and baking in the sun in the summertime. Moving on to the next flower, this is Echinacea Paradoxa. And the paradox is that this is the only yellow flowered Echinacea. All the rest of them are either white or lavender or purple or pink, some shade of that color. You can see that this bloom is actually going a little over the hill now. This is kind of toward the end of its bloom season, but this is the way we have gotten all of those new and unusual colors in cone flowers over the last few years. They've hybridized these yellow ones with some of the pink or purple flowers, and we ended up with those unusual oranges and reds and corals. And another personal favorite of mine is this beautiful flower here. This is Echinacea Pallida, or the pale cone flower. Now the petals are just beginning to emerge. They'll get a little longer and a little wider, and they'll actually droop down, which is a really beautiful effect in the garden. This is a variety called Hula Dancer, and the flowers can be as much as 6 to 7 inches across in this very, very pale pink to almost white. Speaking of drought tolerant, this is a plant that is native to West Texas. This is Salvia gregii. It grows on the dry West Texas roadsides, and there just is not a plant that I can think of that is more drought tolerant than this one. It will begin flowering usually in May, and it will flower all the way through October and sometimes into November. It is a perennial plant that flowers like an annual. It really does bloom all summer without stopping. And while we're on the subject of salvias, I'll show you this interesting plant. This is a felty, gray-leaved salvia that almost looks like a lamb's ear. It is one of the most drought tolerant species, and it really needs a perfect drainage situation. You need good drainage in the winter time, Salvia argentea or silver sage, and I would recommend putting a little bit of gravel in the hole with this so that you don't have water standing around its roots. And then one other quick drought tolerant plant down here in the front. This is the blackfoot daisy. This is actually native to the Rocky Mountains, but does quite well in our southern climate. This is actually a variety of Melampodium. If you've ever grown the little yellow Melampodium as an annual in the garden, this is a perennial cousin to it, and it is hardy to zone 6. When it comes to drought tolerant ground covers, I can't think of any that are more drought tolerant than these terrific little Delospermas. These grow in various places around the world, but many of them are actually native to South Africa, and a lot of them actually are alpine plants. But with proper drainage and soil preparation, they'll do just fine here in the south. They open their blooms for about 6 weeks in the mid-spring to early summer, and this one really is only about 1.5 inches or 2 inches tall. It really is just a flat carpet on the ground. These are kind of an apricot color. This is Delosperma Kelaidis, named after Panayiotis Kelaidis, who is the director of horticulture at the Denver Botanic Garden. There are a number of other forms of this, some with red flowers, some with hot kind of magenta purple flowers, but really a terrific ground cover. And with any of these more succulent type plants, you really want to make sure that the drainage is good. So I would recommend using something like permatill or pea gravel, something like that in the planting hole mixed in with your dirt when you are backfilling, so that these are not sitting in water at any time, especially in the winter. This is a selection of plants that will perform really well year after year in your garden. They're all perennial, and I hope that you will add some of these drought tolerant favorites to your own gardens.